I'm gonna officially add it to my to-do list. I might keep the song, but I really do need to update that intro. Let me friggin' write it down on something, because it still says Jimmy Snow presents The Line. Now it's The Line presents, and then we have 5 different shows. It should be The Line presents. I don't need my name on everything, though. It is kind of nice. But I'm gonna update that intro this week. Matt, how are you doing?
Favor. I'm doing well, and I'm in favor of you adding more stuff to your to-do list. As long as it's not more stuff to my to-do list, yeah, we're good. Today was like I literally got done working 24 minutes ago. Sundays are always the clean up the rat enclosures. And, there are increasingly more of them. So, but today was special because I took an inventory of all of them and marked up exactly how many have and what bins they're in and how much they weigh and which ones. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 maternity racks with 11 moms in there, each of which has 8 to 15 babies right now. So that was my day. I know that has nothing to do with the show, but you asked how I'm doing, and that's what's on my brain.
I'm sore. I have been trying to get some big woodworking projects done that I've had on my to-do list for forever, and I've done that all weekend. And I got to tell you, you don't if you woodwork enough, you don't got to go to the gym, because my legs are burning like I went through a leg day. But the people are here for something else. They are here to see us take calls from theists, atheists who want to ask about certain things. If you have a question or a challenge, we'll obviously take those. We want to hear about spirituality, religion, anything. And right now we have full open line. So that number that is down below, that 720-619-2288, or there is a web link in the description. Also, I'm currently adding to the description our meetup group that we have just launched. If you want to hang out with us, in the future, there will be charity projects. That's the main reason we're getting organized, but also to create a community locally to here in the Austin area. So if you live in Austin or nearby, you're welcome to. If you're willing, there have been people who have messaged me like, am I allowed to join if I'm from San Antonio? And that really depends on if you're willing to make the drive. I don't give a crap. If you're willing to drive from San Antonio to Austin, Houston, Dallas, whatever. I know Aron wants to join in future events, and he'll be coming from Dallas. So, everybody, you are welcome. But we are waiting for, we've got 4 lines open. I know I saw people trying to call in before the show, and I don't know if their calls got lost or what, but call in, and we're looking forward. This week I had multiple people on Twitter very excited to challenge me. I have a feeling at least one of them is watching, but not calling. And I basically said, if you want to debate me, and that was the challenge that was laid down in one case. The person said, basically, if I'm so sure of myself, I should debate him. And I gave him the 2 options. He can, because I'm a public figure who does this for a living, pay me to go to a formal debate. Or if he wants to do it for free, he can simply call this show for free on Sunday, and we can do it. To which he replied, I knew you wouldn't debate with me, which was just too much fun, too funny to hear. When you tell a person you are willing to debate them and give them the options, they go, aha, I knew you wouldn't. Me, my person with my anonymous Twitter account and a covered up, it's so often some anonymous profile photo, and my 60 followers, I demand you provide me a bigger platform and a formal situation. Look, pay me or call the show. That's the deal. We've got calls coming in. They are being screened right now. So we'll get started on that.
I really thought we had somebody in chat who was going to call in, because some people in chat don't know how to fucking mark their sarcasm. They just show up with a name that I don't know, and they're like, Matt, Jesus is going to come back and you're going to be a believer again. Cool. Call the show and tell me about it. Oh, wait, I was just kidding. Well, what fucking good does that do? Learn to mark your sarcasm, or I'll put you in a timeout.
So frustrating.
Bet me I won't.
Yeah. So frustrating. Also, someone said, yes, change the intro music. The music is what I said I'm probably going to keep. I'm sorry if that's not your brand of music, However, it is mine, and that's all that matters. All right, we'll go ahead and take this first call while we wait for more calls again. Okay, and if you've got a question, if you've got a spirituality, some religious challenge, if you want to just tell us what you believe in and why that does not fit within atheism, skepticism, as we've laid out week after week on this channel, we would love to hear from you. We will start by talking to Ian in Boston. Ian, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Good, but I'll be even better if you will mute us in the background there.
I will. All right. I just left the room actually. So is that better?
That's much better. What did you want to call in for?
No, and I'm gonna try to make this quick because I'm an atheist, and I know you guys like to get to the theist callers as quick as you can. My big question is I'm a atheist, obviously, and my background is kind of in climate science, but this question might be geared more towards Matt, but I'm sure Jimmy would have input as well.
I tend to.
Do you know of any certain? Sorry, I might be. Is someone trying to cut in there?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
All right. Are there any passages, I guess, or sections of the Bible that you would say would work well in trying to convince maybe someone on the far end of the Christian spectrum, an evangelical or someone along those lines, to take action against climate change, or not even necessarily to get them to understand the issue, but to make an attempt of,
Nope.
That makes sense.
Nope. Nothing at all. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite is true. If everything happens according to God's plan, then there's no way that the earth can be destroyed through climate change or anything else unless that's God's plan. And we, from the standpoint of the Bible and from evangelical, apostolic Christianity, what they're expecting to happen is a second coming to rescue the people who are saved and headed to heaven. And then everybody else is going to go through a tribulation, and maybe climate change is part of that tribulation. So there's nothing in evangelical, at least in fundamentalism. Now, is there a passage somewhere that you can use to convince? But sure, just like there's, rainbow flag covered gay churches in San Francisco that use the same fucking Bible that I grew up with, but they're absolutely wrong and ridiculously so about whether or not their views on LGBTQ rights are consistent with the Bible. Their views on LGBTQ rights are awesome. And, I'll applaud them all day long, but they're not biblical. Westboro Baptist Church is far more biblical than any gay-friendly church on the planet, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, I follow you. And so I'm picking up that, and this is what I had assumed, that you're not going to be able to get to the core of it. It's just their worldview is kind of in the way there.
There's quite a number.
I was more thinking of just.
I've seen a number of verses used much more often to defend not doing anything about it. That God's going to come down and basically anything we need to do, everything was created for us to do what we need to do at any given time. They're quite the opposite. The few progressive Christians that I've seen try to defend it usually go in the direction about Adam and Eve being put in the garden and basically told to tend to the garden, and that people are in charge of maintaining God's creation. But it is a fucking stretch. It's a real big stretch. Whereas
you can say that twice.
Yeah. But then you get the people that are like, look, it says God said the animals are for us to eat and the planet's here for us to live on. And so when he comes back, any climate that needs righting, he'll just touch the ground and everything will be the way it needs to be.
The direction I was hoping to maybe take this in is, so that I totally am with you, and I kind of expected that as a response. It's just the worldview is going to get in the way, and it might be even the reverse is the case, where they're less likely to engage in any type of climate friendly behaviors. But I'm more thinking of it in terms of pushing them to maybe get to do certain actions in their lives that might make an impact. Like, is there any type of biblical argument that you think you could make against, driving a car or something to work every day?
Neither of us could do it honestly, though. Like, when you ask what argument could we make? First, we have to go, okay, I'm the atheist person. I'm going to talk down to you who's not doing enough for climate change on the individual level, where much of it doesn't fucking matter anyway, because what matters actually is the collective action of like ginormous companies and these people that are polluting, and getting a person to start recycling or turning off their lights. We like to, it makes us feel better. I do energy conserving things day to day, not changing a goddamn thing. We've already passed some points of no return, and we're definitely going to hit more of them. So, but then Matt and I would have to come and say like, oh, okay, listen to us who you know are atheists, and let us tell you what your Bible says, and trust us that we have the correct interpretation, when we're all over the place saying the Bible's a bunch of bullshit that can be arbitrarily interpreted to mean whatever the fuck you want it to mean at any given moment. It's what, in what way could Matt or I argue from the Bible? And maybe you're asking for atheists who, maybe you're talking about atheists who no one knows and they're going to lie and pretend they are believers. I'm not going to advocate for that either.
I think I totally see what you're saying. And just the way I was looking at it was more of kind of trying to not necessarily trick someone into, maybe doing an action or voting in a certain way that might be friendly, but trying to push it in that direction where it's, I wouldn't necessarily believe it, but
do you maybe to call them out?
The right thing, yeah.
You want to call out hypocrisy, I guess, maybe that's about the closest I could get you, but I don't think there's not a Christian out there that's afraid of being a hypocrite if they say they believe in the Bible, because no one is doing the whole thing.
It's a lot easier to get them to take action on small things, because that's where they see our ability to impact things, than it is on big things like climate change, because they do not realistically believe those things are going to happen. They're not as worried about a global pandemic. You would think that after what we've been through, everyone would be clued in to, hey, we need to start taking, medical issues seriously and preparing for the next global pandemic. And yet it's much more difficult to get theists of a particular fundamentalist evangelical stripe to take action on something that's that big, because they feel that those things are the purview of God. There's no way we're not going to blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons unless that's what God wants for the end of the world anyway. And so it's just really wild.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, guys. And just want to say I've been a fan for a while, so it's nice to call in. And this is actually my first time calling in, so
well,
thank you so much to hear you guys not on the screen. So
cool.
Yeah, you were not only the first caller, but you were the only caller there for a minute. Now the lines are full. So yeah, greatly appreciate it.
All right, and I'll let you guys get on to the next call.
Thanks,
I will be watching from the comments. All right.
Cool. Have a good one.
All right.
So
thanks,
quick
guys.
notes before I move on to the next caller. If you are in the Austin, Texas area, the way Jimmy and I are, well, actually the way I am and Jimmy is almost in the Austin, Texas area. We're going out to dinner tonight at 7:00. We're going to the Star of India restaurant. There's a meetup, which I think is there a link? It's right at the top of the show description.
Yep.
Please, if you get the chance, join the meetup group and RSVP, because we'd like to be able to tell the restaurant roughly how many people we've got, whether it's going to be, 10 or 20 or 30. And it's a decent buffet Indian restaurant that I haven't been to in several years. And the other important announcement, because I already did it in chat, is that today is my brother's birthday. And Brad is in chat. He's a moderator. All of you should wish him happy birthday. I mean, if you haven't already, but I already encouraged it. And as I've said about 1 million times before, he is my favorite person on the planet. And a year ago this month, when I was getting ready to go into the hospital for a triple bypass operation, he took time off and came down and helped Arden take care of me along with the doctors. And I miss him dearly over the holidays because we're not going to get to hang out, but hopefully soon. So my brother, who I love greatly, is 2.5 years younger than me, and I hope that he has the most awesomest birthday. There. I've abused the show for my own personal announcements. Now, fuck all that sentimental stuff. Let's get to some callers.
Yeah, cool. Let's talk to Jeffrey here in Texas. Maybe Jeffrey's trying to find out what food recommendations we would give him for Star of India tonight. I don't know what it is. Jeffrey, you're on the line.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I think, so...
Hey, can we mute the background?
I'm going to get right into it. So, basically, I'm an atheist, but I have a respect for the gospel. And I say that because, well, I'm a recent atheist. I've been an atheist about a year and a few months now. And this year, my brother passed away, so I've been thinking a lot about religion and, people that have that walk in faith and all this other stuff. And while there are some, I think there are some stuff with religion where I think like the dogma of religion is bad. I think that the philosophy of God is good for the survival of people who are poor and ignorant and don't know better. And seeing the gospel the way it's unpacked itself kind of as a myth is just as powerful as watching, I guess, like a comic book movie or a superhero movie that, inspires people to be better. And I don't know if that's a good thing. So I guess my question would be, is that a good stance?
No.
For no? Okay.
Not in the slightest. As a matter of fact, I mean, no offense to you, but when people say that they find the dogma bad, cool. But when you say like you find the philosophy good, I'd like to know what about the philosophy in the gospel do you actually think is good? Because what you actually said was that the philosophy was good for people in this category, category. And it sounds incredibly condescending. It sounds very much like, I don't need those mythical stories in order to be a good person, but the little people do. When the truth is, those stories don't make people better. They don't even advocate for something that's better. The philosophy of the gospel is that you are a broken individual who is fallen in the eyes of God and who needs to be made better by accepting a story that doesn't have evidence and involves God coming down and taking human form so that he can sacrifice himself to himself in a gross blood ritual in order to excuse people for sins that he could excuse them for otherwise. There's nothing about, what is it that's good about the gospel?
Well, I guess, just the myth, I wasn't prepared for having the whole conversation, but I would say not necessarily like, I guess you can say, because I don't necessarily buy into this idea that it's all about wrath and it's all about, this death, or this idea that this mythical person resurrected. I think it's really
strange, Jeffrey. It's really strange that I asked you what was good about it, and you've done nothing but stammer and ramble about how you don't think it's all about wrath. Well, how do you know what it's about? Because it seems to me that the core message of the gospel is one that mankind violated God's design and sinned and is in need of salvation, and we're going to do a blood sacrifice to do it. What is good about the gospel? If you want to ignore those, just tell me what's good about the gospels.
That's a good point. I was going to say what's good about it was the idea that people believe in something that allows them to survive over so many years of ignorance and poverty and all these other things that they go through. Now, I'm not trying to be condescending towards those people or whatever they're going through or whatever the situation may be, but it could be any culture that believes in God, not just the American culture that's solely Christian. And
Jeffrey,
stuff.
What specifically helps ignorant and poor people overcome their ignorance and being poor, that religion is the best thing to deliver to them? What is the thing that religion gives them that gets over those humps?
It's I think it's just it's like it's just it's just this innocent idea that there's just good in the world, and we all know the world isn't necessarily easy to live up to or isn't easy to live by. I mean,
I'm going to stop you, Jeffrey, right? Because this is more rambling that doesn't answer the question. What specifically?
Well, I'll get to the answer.
What specifically is the gospel providing that encourages people to survive that they can't get elsewhere?
Right. I think that's what I noticed with what religion does.
It's like you're not even listening.
I mean,
you can't,
at some point,
after I point out, no, stop. Listen to me for a second. After I point out that you're just rambling and have not actually even come close to answering the question, you can't just say, right, that's what I'm saying. Please tell me one thing that is in the gospel that you view as a good thing for humanity.
Just that it's facts, and not facts in the sense of like it's the truth. It's like
I give up.
But there's like certain
no. I'm asking for something specific, and you say just that it's facts. Well, first of all, it's not. It's not truth. That's literally what you said. Don't know me. I'm not the one stumbling here. I asked you for one example of anything in the gospel that is good and true. You said just that it's facts, but it's not facts, and that's not an answer to my question. So you have one more chance. Name one thing from the Gospels that you think is good and true.
There's a quote that gets to me, and it says in the Gospel, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's not
just
necessarily...
Just give the quote. Don't preamble. Just give the quote that this is going to answer the question.
He's
just
already thrown in the fucking towel. He's thrown in the towel because he's saying it's not necessarily a good thing when I asked you for something that is good and true. Can you not provide anything that's good and true? Give me your quote. But this is an epic failure for someone who's trying to call in to suggest that it might be a good thing to respect the Gospels. It's like you don't even know what the fuck they say. So what's the quote?
Few people accept this fact, or few people accept this truth, and I'm paraphrasing, but some people are dedicated to God by force or by choice.
I think, Jeffrey, we're going to let you go, but I think you think very little of poor people and religious people. And I think maybe you don't realize that the reason Matt and I do this show is because we don't. I don't look at a poor religious person who's getting comfort. Stop.
Away from religion.
Jeffrey. I don't look at a poor religious person and think I shouldn't disillusion them from their religion, because where will they be? They'll just be poor if they don't have the religion anymore. I actually think people are better with the truth. And I think you think very little of poor religious people. If this is genuinely your best defense of religion for basically poor people, is what it sounds like. It's this very somewhat creepy elitist position that religion should be maintained amongst the people that are beneath you, is what it sounds like you're defending. This might be something that is subconscious and you don't even recognize you need to address it, but it sounds like you need to address it.
No, I see what you're saying. That's why I called in. I need a fresh perspective. But I guess really when you say it like that, I'm not trying to be condescending or anything, but I do think people should graduate away from religion because it seems to be something that's always going to be there.
You know what? I would almost agree with you on people graduating away from religion in some context, except that it's clear that you don't know anything at all about it. So if you can't point to one thing in the gospel that you find good and true, why should anybody care what you think about whether or not people should graduate away from religion? Some of us in this room know the Bible. Others involved in this call don't. And so if you've got developed opinions about what's good and bad about it, and you can't give one example of one thing that's good and true, maybe you should spend, and I say this as somebody who does this frequently, more of your time as an atheist studying the Bible better so you have a better understanding of whether or not you should respect it and how you would go about telling other people whether or not to respect it.
I'm actually I don't like scripture because of the way it is bad. I've made that clear about that with some people in the past, but it's I don't know why it lingers. The stuff to give up religion lingers. It's not easy. It lingers. I don't know how to explain that, but I know what you're saying, Matt, and I respect y'all's opinion. I'm not the one person just to be closed-minded and say, this isn't real, or this isn't the fact, or this isn't the truth. Truth doesn't care about your feelings, or facts don't care about your feelings. So, but anyways, yeah, I'm not trying to look at it as an elitist point of view. I know that's what it seems like, but I would rather Christians and all these other religions stay on their side, and then I stay on my side. But if they want to approach me with their stuff, I will say, hey, look, well, if you look at these things, I'll tell you right now, those things are not very good, but I will come with a sense of respect of saying, well, I know that it's like this. It's like saying, like, when I see a person like this trying to reach out to me, I see like a little kid playing imaginary friends and telling me, look at my imaginary friend. And I'm like, okay, but let me tell you about why that isn't the case. And then break it down.
But you're not
bit,
the guy
not
to do
to
that.
the point of like breaking them. Right.
So,
I'm not, but
I think
I
maybe,
just feel like if they're going to come to me, I'm
Jeffrey,
going
hold on. First, I'm very sorry that you lost your brother. That's impactful.
Right.
And I think if I'm being as charitable as possible, it seems that what you're trying to say is not that you're holding actual respect for the scripture, but that you recognize that people value it and that you don't know enough about it. So you stay more hands off and are glad that they have something that makes them happy. That's as close as I can get to a charitable reading of what you're saying. And if that's close enough, then my response is you should know more about stuff before you engage. So it's good for you to stay more hands off in that area, but maybe change the phrasing so that it doesn't look like you're showing respect for something that you don't even know what it says. And so while people have something that makes them happy and may give them some purpose or meaning or direction in their life that they might not otherwise have, I would rather that they were getting something that gave them purpose and meaning and direction that were true and good and useful, and not something that were incredibly divisive and destroying minds and lives and families and the world.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Oh, I agree with that. But yeah, I agree with that. I guess that's it. I appreciate y'all's time. I just, I appreciate it. I just, wish I was around more atheists and more people of scientific knowledge and stuff like that. I want to be around more people who ignite more of a passion for science.
Well, if you're in the Austin area, you can come to dinner tonight.
That's right. We'll still be nice.
Maybe you'll find some.
That's right.
Anyway, thanks a lot for the call, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
See you, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care. All right. Are we ready? Are you ready?
The last thought I had is, if you're still watching, Jeffrey, do go back and listen to the call and try and listen from the perspective of a religious person or a poor person who's religious, not trying to be condescended to. Because I almost cut in when you said, I'm not trying to be condescending. I just think of religious people as like a child saying, meet my imaginary friend.
Yeah.
That's pretty condescending. So that's my final thought. But yeah, I'm ready to go to the next.
Sweet. I'll click it.
Cool.
We have Mark, a theist in New York City. And as always, theists have top priority. Welcome, Mark. You've evidently got an argument for the existence of God or something along those lines?
Yes, I do. How's it going, gentlemen?
It's going pretty good.
So I wanted... Good. I was actually listening to I guess what is he? He is a cognitive psychologist, Donald Hoffman. I'm not sure if you gentlemen are very familiar with this man. He's a professor at University of California, and he's done some work on consciousness recently. Actually, he was saying after he became tenured, he actually started kind of branching out and doing some more work in this area, which he actually said he waited until he was tenured to do it because he knew he was going to get a lot of pushback. And from his work, and kind of put out a model out there that consciousness is not something that just arises from brain activity. He actually kind of flips it around and states that consciousness is primary. And I thought it was interesting, and I don't know I don't really know a lot about him. I'm not sure if he's a theist or not, but it just reminded me as I was listening to it that it brought up something that I know a lot of philosophers discuss, and some there's a theistic interpretation of some of these issues that sort of ground our consciousness in God. And on the flip end, from a naturalistic perspective, we don't have a theory of consciousness that can explain how it arises and how we have this subject. I'm sorry?
So what? Science doesn't have an explanation for consciousness that is robust and thorough right now. Religion doesn't have an explanation for consciousness ever. In the entire history of the world, there's not a single scientific question that has been answered by science that has been overturned by religion. But the number of times that religions have made proclamations about science that have had those overturned by actual scientific exploration evidence is staggering. As a matter of fact, throughout the entirety of humanity, every time that we've actually learned the best understanding of how something works, it's never been magic or supernatural. It has always been naturalistic. And so, yes, we don't have a robust model of consciousness right now, but neither does religion. As a matter of fact, not only does religion not have one, religions cannot have one because they're not doing science.
Well, so what is your definition of science, Matt?
Science is the exploratory process of seeking knowledge and understanding about the world. But the scientific methods are rooted in testability. Okay? So if something isn't testable, it will not be considered science. And supernatural things are not testable because they are not falsifiable.
Okay. Do you think we could derive truth outside of science, or they're only derivable through science and through the scientific method?
So I'm not convinced that we can actually derive truth at all. The best we can do is come up with models that are seemingly, by all available evidence, the ones that are most consistent with the facts of reality. But if we're going to call truth that which comports with reality, then whatever method we use for finding truth, if it's actually discovering truth, would be a scientific method, because truth involves testability, falsification, and verification. So if let's say I'm hungry. What test can you do to determine I'm hungry? Well, you may not be able to do much. You might be able to do some stuff. You could maybe hook me up to an MRI and test to see what's going on there. But I can do a test to know whether I'm hungry, because that's a direct experiential thing, the I am hungry. But what if we were to say, is this stove hot? Well, that is a fact that is non-subjective and not a matter of opinion. And so if we were to pray and get an answer that, yes, this stove is hot, that wouldn't be science, because that method has demonstrated no reliability for testing and achieving that result.
Hey, Mark, before you respond, I'm going to ask you to take us off speakerphone.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. So I think whether something is or is not science is a more narrow question. I think the more important question is whether we can derive truths about the world, about reality, only through what I would call the modern scientific method.
Yes,
or
and I think this is a complete, absolute, no, stop. I think that what you're saying is a complete, absolute deflection. You want to claim that religion has an answer for consciousness, correct?
It has a framework and understanding how it could derive.
Do you have a religion that you can point to that can demonstrate a model that explains consciousness that is testable and falsifiable?
It's not falsifiable.
Do you have a religion that presents a testable, falsifiable model that explains consciousness? Yes or no?
I would say yes.
Okay.
But
please present the model. Mm-hmm. Please present the model right now, without further ado, so that we can determine whether or not you actually have a testable, falsifiable model.
Okay, and this is how I would answer that. I think Christianity is falsifiable. Okay, and if I'm deriving my understanding of consciousness through
Mark, I've muted you. Listen to me very carefully, because I have zero fucking patience for bullshit. I asked you to present your model that is testable and falsifiable that explains consciousness. And the first words out of your mouth were, I believe Christianity is falsifiable. Well, first of all, you're wrong. It's not falsifiable. There is no way for you to demonstrate that Christianity would be false. But whether or not you believe Christianity is falsifiable is irrelevant. I don't care what you believe. I care what you demonstrate. And what you believe about whether Christianity is falsifiable has nothing to do with whether or not you have a falsifiable model for consciousness. So I'm going to take you off mute, and you can try one more time to present a testable, falsifiable model for consciousness. Okay.
So it depends, I'm not trying to lawyer out of answering the question, but it depends on how narrow or broad of an answer you give often to.
Okay, you're muted again. The second you say you're not trying to lawyer away the answer, you're a liar, because that's exactly what you're trying to do. If I were to ask a scientist for a testable, falsifiable model, do you think that they would start by saying, I'm not trying to lawyer away the question, but it depends on how narrow? No, sir. You think that you have a testable, falsifiable model for consciousness. Spit it out or admit that you don't. Those are the only fucking options right now.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, I will admit this. It does not have a scientific model, but it has a metaphysical model for explaining consciousness.
Goodbye, Mark.
Oh, I had a question for Mark. Damn.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that.
I wanted to know, I knew we weren't going to get the thing on consciousness. What I wanted to know from Mark was, if he believes it's falsifiable, what's an example of something in Christianity we could use to falsify? I wanted to hear his because I know it wouldn't have been, I know he wouldn't have had a good answer. It would have been, well, if you had the body of Jesus and you could prove he was dead, some stupid shit like that, like William Lane Craig gives when people ask him that question. And only for my amusement did I want to know that, but that's all right.
I try and make sure that if I say something that I actually do it, and I'm tired of giving somebody one more chance about 5 times in a row. But in the future, I will just say, I will then bow out, and Jimmy can go. But the truth is, Mark didn't understand what a testable, falsifiable model is, and how that would have, whether it came from religion or not, still have been scientific. If you have a testable, falsifiable model, it doesn't matter if it originated in religion, it's still a testable, falsifiable model, which would make it a part of science. The problem is that no such thing exists within religious doctrines. No such thing exists when trying to tie to the supernatural, because the supernatural is not testable or falsifiable. And so if you have your metaphysical, metaphorical, substrate, supernatural, quantum model that you want to parade around, cool, but that's not a testable, falsifiable model. The fact of the matter is that human beings don't currently have a robust understanding of consciousness. And the model that consciousness is an emergent property of a functioning brain, that the mind is what the brain does, is not a proven one. It is just the one that seems to be most consistent with available evidence. But if your model is that consciousness is derived through some supernatural intervention, like a soul that has been implanted in a body to be the ghost in the machine, you have an untestable, unfalsifiable model. Faith is not a path to truth. Faith is gullibility. Faith is the excuse people give when they don't have a good reason. Never in the history of scientific inquiry has someone said, please describe your model. And that person responded with, well, I believe Christianity is falsifiable. That's not how any of that works.
There's an interesting thing too, where if you start diving into people, where they're even leaving this term consciousness, because they acknowledge that there's a natural element to, like, when you're literally doing functions of the brain, when you're doing math, yeah, we can see where that lights up. When you're playing music, where that lights up. When you're learning something, when you're explaining something, we can see your brain is engaged. But then just that sort of concept of that sort of like existential, I have sensation seems to be all that's left. Like there might be something still there, which might not need an explanation. We may just be mistaking the simultaneous processing of multiple inputs, hearing, seeing, and everything else at the same time, plus being thoughtful, for it needing to have its own unique concept. And it may not even need its own unique concept. We don't know. But we're content enough to say we don't know.
I appreciate the fact that, and I get it. I already hung up. I appreciate the fact that Mark and others are willing to call in to have these conversations, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm asking specific questions so that we don't sit here and spin our wheels and waste the listener's time.
I don't know if you see line 13 says they can do what you're asking.
Cool. Go for it.
Let's take it. Rick in Canada, you said you have a model of consciousness using biblical ideology. Let's ask the first question. Is it falsifiable?
No, it's not.
All right, no worries then.
It's provable.
It's provable, but not falsifiable.
No, well, no, not really. So I listened to you guys talk last week, and you're talking. I think that energy being eternal everywhere. In the beginning was only energy. It's the driving force of all life, et cetera, shares coincidences with God, what we depict God as. I heard Matt say energy is a physical process which we understand, therefore it eliminates that, which I think is illogical. But nonetheless, he also said last week that the brain is the way that we interpret our consciousness, right? And this is a debate whether it's energy or the brain working together, what it is. But there's a fungus that the Japanese use to map their subway stations. This fungus solves mazes. It has problem-solving abilities, and it has no brain. The only thing it has in it is cells and energy. It's a conscious being. It has to be.
Oh, Rick, how embarrassing. What an embarrassing thing to call in as the example.
Yeah,
Rick, how fucking embarrassing is it to call in and ascribe consciousness, Rick, to ascribe consciousness to something that no biologist involved with that experiment suggests means consciousness and decision making. It'd be like saying, look at a snowflake, Rick. It'd be like saying, look at a snowflake and the choices it made to be symmetrical. What an embarrassing fucking thing to say. Yes, it is, because you are talking about
that's not the same
reason. All right, I'm muting you because you don't get to yell over me. You don't get to. I can yell over you anytime I want. This is a dictatorship, and I'm going to stop short of telling you to go fuck yourself. As far as the fungus goes, it may have, by the way, I'm not pretending I know the full explanation of it. No one has suggested a conscious decision needed to be made when it is talking about environmental things which caused it to most efficiently spread, which, by the way, includes a lot of branches early on that then end up dying off because they weren't as efficient. It is a process of elimination sort of thing. You can also see this very thing happen when you look at the experiments of the evolution of bacteria as they become more or less resistant to antibiotics. And you can make, in a matter of days, completely antibiotic resistant bacteria. It is not a process of it somehow zoomed out and looked and made the decision. It was a process of elimination. Would you like to try I'm going to unmute you now. Let's see if you can unembarrass yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so if you want to hear what the scientists say, go watch it. They call it remaps itself. It doesn't die off branches. It blobs out, then it recalculates, and it picks the most efficient problem-solving route, right?
Yeah.
That's not dying off branches. That's
all right, you're muted again, because I'm not going to be yelled at. I'm not yelling at you. If you can take a goddamn breath and speak without yelling like you're talking down, doesn't matter that you're completely wrong right now as far as your characterizations. You're using colloquial terms as they have made to use. They do not literally say it. They do not literally mean it is consciously calculating the way we think of people calculating math. But if you can speak, you can stay on. If you can't, fuck off. Here you go. You're unmuted.
Yeah, I'll speak. Can you hear?
Yep.
Okay, I'll speak. Yeah. So what they're saying, right? And so you're saying that they're not saying it's consciousness. I agree, but they're not saying it's not. They don't know what it is. So you went on to say that that's not what they're saying.
You're already doing it again. Slow the fuck down, Rick. Matt, you're muted.
Rick, yeah, I know I was muted because I don't need to talk to Rick about this because I looked into this slime mold ages and ages ago, and yes, it's interesting in the same way that it's interesting when trees adjust their growth and flip their leaves so that they're going towards the sun, because we can interpret some of those things as if they are conscious by using anthropomorphization, which isn't necessarily viable, which is why when the scientists study this, they don't say this is a demonstration of consciousness, because as you noted, they're still trying to declare what it is. But you called in, Rick, to say that you had a model of consciousness using biblical ideology. There's nothing about slime mold that is biblical ideology at all. At all. So you called in to claim that you could do something, and not only have you not done it, you're not even in the ballpark of doing it, you're just sitting around being wrong about science. Please present your model of consciousness using biblical ideology and stop being butthurt over what you think I said or trying to preach about science that you don't understand.
Okay, so in the beginning, God, this is how it proves the Bible, okay? So God is said to be eternal. He can neither be created nor destroyed. He's the driving force of all life. He's said to be invisible. He's said to be everywhere. So thus is energy, right? And energy is in the brain, and there's a discussion right now, what is more responsible for consciousness? If it's the energy, the Christians got it. If it's the brain, well, you guys still don't got it, but at least it helps your case. Okay, the point is that we can find a fungus.
Rick, I'm going to pause you again because you are incapable so far of making a logical argument where premises lead to a conclusion, because you started by saying in the Bible, God is said to be eternal. Okay, well, what is said of God is irrelevant until you demonstrate that those things are actual characteristics of God. You don't, the Bible can say all kinds of things, but you don't get to start with, the Bible says God's eternal. The Bible says God's invisible. The Bible says God's everywhere. Yes, even if I just accept right off the bat that the Bible says those things about God, that doesn't mean that they are true. You would have to demonstrate they're true. But it gets worse because you said, therefore, because the Bible says that God is eternal, invisible, and everywhere, therefore, he is energy. No, sir, I'm sorry. That's not how a logical syllogism works. That's not how science works. That's not how anything works. You don't get to say, this fairy tale book says that God is invisible, and therefore that means he's energy, which now means I can go off and talk about energy. None of those things work. So start over, Rick, and present a model of consciousness using the Bible piece by piece.
Yes. So like science, we make predictions. 3,500 years ago, the Bible made a prediction of something that we now call fact, and that is energy. And that energy, those facts are attributed to the God of the Bible.
Rick, what was the prediction 3,500 years ago that predicted energy?
Hello?
Yeah.
Can't hear
Yes,
you.
you said that 3,500 years ago, the Bible made a prediction, and that prediction was energy. What is that prediction?
Yeah. So the prediction is, I say energy because that's exactly what we know about energy now in this era.
What was
But in
the
that
prediction?
era,
What was the verse?
No, sir.
Give
I'm going to
the
mute you
prediction.
again. I'm going to remain calm, and I'm going to give you one more fucking chance. What passage are you talking about that is a biblical prediction about energy? I want to know the passage, and I want to know how we can verify that the prediction came true. So give me the passage first.
okay, so energy is neither created or destroyed. God, I am the Alpha and the Omega. In the beginning, God created the heavens.
Oh my God, I'm muting you again. Rick, I swear, take a big fucking deep breath, because right now I'm the only friend you have, and I'm being incredibly patient with you. Incredibly patient. What passage in the Bible predicted energy? Go.
Can neither be created or destroyed. Alpha and Omega. I just told you. I just gave it to you. You just don't want to hear it. It's the
Okay, I'm going to mute you, you arrogant prick, and you're going to listen to me. The Bible doesn't say energy cannot be created or destroyed, you dumb motherfucker. Now, what passage in the Bible makes a prediction about energy? Chapter and verse right fucking now.
Yes, it does say. It says God cannot be created. The Spirit of God is energy. It's
Chapter and fucking verse when I unmute you, or you will be banned from the show. Here we go. Chapter and verse.
I just gave it to you over and over. You just don't want to hear
You
it, man.
haven't
You just
said it
deny
once.
it.
You
That's your
haven't said
problem.
a single
You
chapter or
pretend like
verse,
there's
you
no
lying
evidence, but you
piece
guys
of
just
shit.
deny it.
You are the most embarrassing representative of
Jesus
Jesus Christ I have ever engaged with. You will no longer be allowed to call this show. I asked you for chapter and verse. First of all, the Bible doesn't say energy can't be created or destroyed. But it also doesn't say what you think it says about God. And not once did you mention a single chapter or a single verse. You little liar. You're a liar. Why would Jesus send a dumb liar like you to try to teach the world anything? Is Jesus stupid? Is Jesus a fan of liars? Is Jesus sitting around going, you know what I really should do? I know there's a bunch of people out there who are desperately in need of an understanding of me for salvation. So what I'll do is I'll send this guy who doesn't understand science, who can't listen, who can't speak calmly, who can't answer a single question, and who, when asked repeatedly for chapter and verse, never cites a single chapter or verse. I will send the literal worst representative I possibly can, because that'll really help the world. Give up, Rick.
The funny thing is I think you and I both know what verse, if he was being honest, he was pretending to quote. If he had just answered it, I think he would have said Revelations 21:6. I'm almost positive. And yet he couldn't. Because he just kept yelling Alpha and Omega, which that's the Alpha and Omega verse.
Yeah.
And you know that the moment you go, I believe Rick called in about a month ago, and I believe when Rick called in about a month ago, his name was Charles. And I believe that he said that the proof of the Bible was that the firmament, which is made of water, is spoken of in the Bible, and we would thousands of years later discover that there is moisture in the atmosphere. I believe that was the last time he called. I cannot imagine I have not had that kind of energy that Rick has for this since stopping using very hard drugs. I'll let you pick.
The thing here is that, so Revelation 21:6 and this whole thing about I am the Alpha and the Omega, I am the beginning and the end. So if we were to, I should do a whole video just about this one passage and how absolutely ridiculous Rick looks right now. Because if something is the beginning and the end, then it is not endless.
Yeah.
It cannot be eternal and have a beginning. It cannot be eternal and have an end. Now, what the passage is saying is that it is the beginning and end of everything else. But that passage doesn't say that it is, in fact, endless. But even if it were, energy cannot be created or destroyed within a system. These are thermodynamics laws here. That's not like this says that in the Bible.
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. Right. And I like that this was meant to be the prediction on the level of a scientific prediction. Like if scientists go and they say, we believe if we introduce this in this place, the polarity of these atoms will shift to this side. And then they go and test it. And his is, here are some words that if I just mentally masturbate, I can change to mean what I'm saying, even though for thousands of years, no one interpreted it that way. But then one day, we discover energy and the mechanics of energy and go clearly, well, this is the time to interpret it correctly. I feel like that call ended the way it began. How embarrassing.
Yeah. And for the person in chat who did perhaps want a whole video on Rev 21:6, I would say that briefly, putting on my Christian hat again, I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, is most charitably interpreted, given everything else that's in the Bible, as, here, let me put my Jesus hat on, as meaning I am the source of beginnings and endings. That is probably the most charitable reading of Rev 21:6, because if it were literally saying I am the beginning and the end, well, then it's not endless and it's not eternal. But if it's saying is I am the source, the foundation, the origin from which all beginnings and endings emerge, that is probably the closest thing to a charitable reading of Rev 21:6 that I can give. So there you go.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to, because I think this one might end up being quick, I'm going to bring in Bill from St. Lucia. Bill, are you just wanting to share your story?
I got a phone call.
Oh, Bill, are you there?
From text.
Bill.
Yeah, I am.
Hey, are you just calling to share your story? Because that's not really what this show is. There are podcasts and shows out there about that. You might contact one of them. If you have a question or a challenge or a specific theistic proposition you want guidance on maneuvering, we do that. But this isn't really a call-in show where you call in and just tell people your story.
Yeah, I understand all that. All right, I'll let you go then.
All right. Yep. I definitely. Have a good one, Bill.
And see, now, despite the fact that it's not what the show's about, kind of want to hear Bill's story.
I did set it up very well.
I know there are people who are trying to call in and argue, amongst other things.
So. We'll take another. There are some lines open. I'm leaving more lines open. If you're a theist, you want to call in and challenge us, we'd love to hear from you. We've got a couple. Yeah, you've got at least 2 lines. Call in. But right now we have Joshua in North Carolina. Joshua, what do you got for us?
Oh yeah, on today.
Good. What do you got?
Oh yeah, so I was just curious calling in. Well, what inspired me to call in? I did a persuasive speech class in college, and it was on why the God of the Bible is vile. And the response was not good. And like, I'm going into great detail on like specific verses like that explain genocide, slavery, rape, child abuse, the list goes on. And it was just so strange how people can just ignore those things. So I guess my question is to you, and I know that they're literally indoctrinated to believe it. So like, I was wondering, like, how is it possible to sort of break this cycle of indoctrination? And like, what would be the best methodology of going about doing that? Because it's just astonishing me that people can ignore those verses and then say, "Oh, I'll accept it. I'll accept it." Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think I get what you're putting down. Honestly, on my end, as far as any individual goes, how you deconvert one person versus another, I wish I knew the formula on what would work on person A versus person B. I would have turned it on my own family a long time ago, because that seems to be the trickiest group of people to deconvert, despite the fact that I've participated in the deconversion of many other people. So as far as which tools, there are a lot of good tools to learn as far as having the discussions, how to listen, what questions to ask. On the grand scale, which it said you wanted to ask about in the notes, right now the thing that I feel like is deconverting the most people is literally just presenting a way that doesn't require you to have such cognitive dissonance about so many things. So like the things that you were just listing off, especially as we see the younger generation who are being raised in some of these religions who go, wait, it doesn't really make sense that this is a good book when there's slavery in it, when there is any of the things that you listed, and having that massively available and loud and out there and presentable, I think has been our number one tool so far. But I personally don't have a specific way to tell you is best, but Matt and I are trying this way, where theists can call in and embarrass themselves about fungus. Matt, do you have any ideas?
Well, it's one of those ones where it's like, you're basically saying, what's the best way to do what I think you guys have been trying to do for decades? And I will say that I know that in your persuasive speech class, they probably didn't teach you that when an interlocutor is repeatedly dishonest, that you should call them a dumb motherfucker like I did. I don't generally recommend that as a way of changing minds. That's more of a, you have now wasted everybody's time. And certainly in the conversations with the people who I'm close to, or just randomly out on the town, if I'm engaged with someone, those conversations go better for some reason. And maybe it's the nature of the call-in show. When people get in here, it's automatically a super confrontational thing where they're like, I'm going to talk a million miles an hour. I'm going to ignore everything that Matt and Jimmy say. I'm just going to go because I know I can say this, and then I can, say, oh, well, you guys just didn't want to listen to me. If the conversations that you're having are going like that, it's probably worth taking a step away, because my conversations with real people in the real world don't go down the way they do on the show. And I think I've seen conversations go down in real life as poorly as they have on the shows. And I think that I think that what we're trying to do is show the best arguments and the best way to kind of pick apart arguments. But we're not always necessarily showing the best way to ultimately convince someone, because the people that we're talking to, I'm not trying to convince the caller. I'm trying to present what I think should convince them. And I do it knowing that they're incredibly unlikely to change their mind. But in the conversations that you're having, where you say, hey, let me point out all these things that are wrong with the Bible, and they just don't seem to care, or they don't agree, or they want to come up with an excuse for everything. I see that all the time too, especially when I'm having one-on-one conversations with apologists on things like slavery. And no, I don't have some great way to kind of make them care. It kind of reminds me of what we talked about at the beginning of the show, which is if you think that God has this plan, then worrying about climate change is really silly, if not directly opposed to God's plan. And so trying to figure out whether or not slavery was immoral, thousands of years ago when people were saying that God was okay with it. I don't know. I really don't know what the path is to make it more compelling, other than to just keep being honest and being compassionate and saying, look, I'm trying to advocate for a better world that is measurable by science and statistics, that involves longer life and healthier life and more equality and more freedom. If you or your God want a different world, then we're already at odds. And if you think that yours is truly better, you need to make the case for why it's better. And if you're willing, if every time I launch an objection, you're just going to say, well, that's part of God's plan. Okay. How do you know that your God is the good one? I need to know, because the measure that I'm using for good doesn't come up that way.
That sounds interesting. Yeah.
I would bet, Joshua, for you specifically, I would bet that that Anthony's channel's street epistemology would probably interest you very much. Just the way he has conversations with people would probably be informative for you. Other than that, anything for us before we move on to some of the things we've got in the queue?
Well, last question is, So I was actually talking to this one atheist, and he said, like, if Yahweh was real, he'd worship him. And I thought that was absurd because I think Yahweh is just abhorrent beyond measure. So would you guys worship Yahweh if he was real?
I don't
Not
think
if he
so.
says, yeah, if he says the Bible describes, no. And frankly, I don't think I would worship anything or anyone, because anything deserving of worship and admiration and reverence would never require it.
The closest you could get is that maybe I'd fake it to avoid going to hell if hell is as they've made up over the years. But I imagine if God exists the way the Bible says, how are you going to fake out God? So I don't think there would even be an effective way for me to pretend. Cool, Joshua?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I
Cool.
thought you stopped. I thought something cut off.
No. That was the end. Anything else? Otherwise, we're going to let you go and move on.
All right, nah, nothing else. But thank you, though.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's see. We'll try. Emmanuel, I've got the wrong. Emmanuel, who calls in as slave of Christ. You've called in quite a few times. I don't think you've presented an argument that has worked so far. I hope that you have something unique today. Emmanuel, tell us, you have Christian doctrine is perfect and evidential in the notes.
Yes. So before me, there was an atheist that called in. He said, I respect the gospel, and the gospel have a very good, I respect the gospel, he was saying. And he was saying that it was honorable. And I just want to say that there are messages in the gospel that is very, respected or honorable or good.
Hey, slave of Christ, how did the rest of that call go?
Actually,
I'm sorry?
and before you say that, you're wrong. The caller did not call in to say that he respects the gospel. He was asking whether or not he should.
Yeah, that's why I was asking how the rest of that call went, because everything you just said, he ended up saying the opposite. He said it wasn't honorable, that it wasn't good. It wasn't a good book. I don't know what you thought pointing that out wrongly when you apparently didn't listen to the call, how that was going to help. But I'd love to hear your defense of what we have in the notes, and you can tell me if the notes are wrong. Christian doctrine is perfect and evidential.
Yeah. So what I think is there's a message in the gospel that could be verified, and there is a message in the gospel that can't be verified. So that you have to accept it by faith, or you have to throw it out. But I think there's
then throw it out.
Significant.
Why should we accept anything by faith?
No, that's your choice. It's like you could accept it by faith, or you could actually seek out for because we don't have a thing, to make it valid. So there are things in the scripture that we can't verify it, or it doesn't make sense in human logic. I understand that, oftentimes, I sit down and, I read scriptures, and there are things in scripture that doesn't make sense at all, or which are illogical. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
I'm aware that the Bible is illogical. Please move forward, Emmanuel. Get to your point here.
Okay. So what you said that there are things hang on. You said that there are things in the gospel that are verifiable and things that are not. Now, I can tell you right now, neither Jimmy nor myself are going to accept anything from the gospel that isn't verifiable. So let's throw out everything that isn't verifiable, and please tell us something that is verifiable in the gospel.
Okay, so the verifiable, or things that we have evidence for, will be the death, crucifixion of Jesus, and the resurrection of Jesus. So that's verifiable.
No, we don't. That is not verifiable. You can't verify any aspect of Jesus's life, including whether or not he lived, but you certainly cannot verify a resurrection. So try again. What else in the gospel do you think is verifiable?
For example, the apostles' martyrdom is very verifiable historically. So we have undeniable evidence that
Emmanuel. Yes, people have died for their beliefs. This is true in Christianity. It's true in other religions. True as well. The fact that someone died for their beliefs does not mean their beliefs are true. So what is verifiable in the gospel that goes to the truth of Christianity? Because if you just want to say somebody lived, said some things, and died for their beliefs, cool. I can't actually verify that. But even if it were true, it wouldn't mean Christianity is true. So all we're looking for is, can you give me an example of something that is verifiable that demonstrates the truth of Christianity?
Okay. The first will be the consistent doctrine from the Old Testament. So if you look at the New Testament and the New Testament,
I'm sorry, but your opinion that the doctrine is consistent with the Old Testament is, first of all, objected to by Jews who don't accept Christ as the Messiah. But even if the passages are consistent with the Old Testament, that does not in any way get to demonstrate the truth of that. You're still pointing to one story in a book that is consistent with another story in a book. Thank you.
You can have entire series of books. The Lord of the Rings, all 3 books consistent with each other. Still fiction.
Yeah. So what is verifiable? What can you point to that the Bible gets right that would help us determine that the core doctrine theology is true?
Okay. So the things are, first of all, I want to say that, Matt, I think you'll come to Christianity at the end. That's how I feel.
Okay. I'm going to mute you and you're going to listen to me, because you've called to this show many times and it's been an epic failure every time. I literally just asked you to provide a single thing that is verifiably true about Christianity, that demonstrates the truth of Christianity. And what you replied with was to say that you think I am going to come to Christianity in the end. First of all, fuck you. Stay on topic. I don't give a shit if you think I'm coming back to Christianity or not. I am wholly unimpressed with your meanderings about what you think is going to happen with me in the future, unless you are willing to say that if I die without publicly coming back to Christianity, you will then admit that you are completely wrong about Christianity, in which case then it might almost be relevant. But it's not relevant to what we're talking about now. So I'm going to give you another chance, because I am in the Christmas spirit of giving. And I'm going to give you one more chance. Start by saying, here's a fact which is verifiable, which demonstrates the truth of Christianity, and then state that fact.
Okay, there are 3 evidences for Christianity. So there are 3 witnesses in heaven, the spirit, the blood, and the flesh.
Okay. I'm going to mute you, and you're going to listen to me again. And then I'm not going to take you off mute, because you're done, unless Jimmy wants to address something. Because when I ask you for a fact that demonstrates the truth of Christianity, and you going straight to the Johannine comma, a fraudulent verse in the Bible, that there are 3 that testify to the truth: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That verse, by the way, is an interpolated verse that invented the Trinity out of whole cloth. But in any case, even if it weren't a forgery, even if it weren't fraudulent, I asked for something that is verifiably true, that demonstrates the truth of Christianity. And instead, you decide to give me something that isn't verifiable, isn't true, and wouldn't demonstrate the truth of Christianity. Jimmy, do you have anything for Emmanuel?
I got nothing. I almost didn't take the call because I knew how it would go.
Okay. Emmanuel, do you understand why I'm letting you go now?
Yeah, but there's also a
Cool.
moral.
Yeah, no, there's no
principle
but. I just wanted the yes is good enough. It's the first time I've gotten a yes or no out of you, although you still had to follow it up with a big but.
Yeah.
I
Not
like
unlike
big
myself.
butts and I cannot lie.
That's all right. Yeah. All right. We had another theist call I wanted to check.
Cool.
Kevin from South Carolina. Yep, that says Joshua, but it is Kevin on the line. I'll fix the tag. I got them.
Hey,
all
Kevin,
mixed
how
up.
are you? Thanks for waiting.
Kevin.
Oh, I had myself on mute. You guys remember chatting with me last week?
Maybe. It'll, as you bring up the topic,
It'll probably come back to us, but you're calling from a different number, I think, because it doesn't show anything about last week's call.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just going to ask a question about the idea of an evolving God. I went to some temples for like the Jewish religion, and they were teaching about this, and then I encountered it again at university.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what you're asking about with an evolving God? Because are you asking about evolving concepts of gods, in which case humans' God concept changes with us, or are you suggesting that there is a God that?
Yeah, the idea, the way that they put it to me, they even cited the same verses. It was Kings, I think Kings 18, and it's Elijah versus the priest of Baal, where they're trying to start a fire on the mountain or something like that.
I love this story.
Sure. And I guess I was reading it incorrectly because I looked it up as research for the call. And pretty much what I remember from the story was that the priests of Baal danced around the fire, tried to start a fire, and it rained. And then Elijah prayed to God, and the fire started. And the message that they would give at temple, and also what they said the interpretation was supposed to be, was that you have to have something that you can repeat. And if you don't have something that you can repeat, then it's not worth praying about. And I thought, they said that was a good message for an evolving God. You have to have something useful. So they kind of pointed to that as early empiricism. And I don't think the church has always been a leader, but in certain things, the church has been kind of like, since it was tied to the central government, it was the place that things like astronomy started to get big, you know?
Okay, so I don't recall the specific details of the passage. I could go read it, but I'm not going to dig in on that right now. I thought we were talking about this concept of an evolving God, and I don't think suggesting that a passage in Kings might have alluded to empiricism gives me any sort of clarity on what you mean by evolving God.
The idea, like, for example, the covenant with God that Moses has is that you can negotiate with God. So God is supposed to develop and God is supposed to be useful. So people who argue that
God is supposed to be, according to the Bible,
concept,
according to the Bible, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Right. So I don't understand why do people argue that God is like an objective thing that's always the same instead of a concept that we're supposed to develop and reach for and try to figure out?
It's a weird show to call us because we're saying you don't need a God at all or a concept or whatever. There are Jews who don't believe God is perfect. I know that there's this sort of concept of God, but they don't claim omniscience or omnipotence. I'm thoroughly confused too by this call because our screener said you were a theist. That is true, correct? You have a God belief?
It is true, yes. The thing is that I've only read through the Bible 2 times, and I mean, it did inform my belief, but I wouldn't call myself necessarily a Christian. I think, like, since you have this platform, I always kind of wonder why you don't kind of push like a middle ground or like a stepping stone where people is like,
because
I give a shit about what's true.
Yeah.
Because I give a shit about what's true. And if there isn't a God, why do I need to push some middle ground? the Bible. So here you're looking at a passage in Kings, and you're trying to make it, not just you, whoever told you this, is trying to massage this as if the passage in Kings was an early implementation of empiricism, and that God is somebody that you can negotiate with, which is how the God is portrayed in a couple of areas. I mean, he makes a bet with Satan regarding Job, but there's two different verses, one in the Old Testament in Malachi 3:6, and then repeated in Hebrews 13:8, where it says basically that, well, the Old Testament says that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And then in the New Testament says Jesus Christ is. And so that is an unchanging, unevolving God. And so you seem to be looking for some middle ground and wondering why we're not. And the reason we're not looking for a middle ground is because what we're looking for is truth. And the truth doesn't necessarily lie in the middle. If somebody says it's raining and somebody says it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's sprinkling. If somebody says that the stop sign was red and somebody else says it was blue, that doesn't mean it was purple. And so what we're looking for is the truth. And you know what's consistently failed to demonstrate any reliable claim at all? Religions. There's absolutely nothing about the supernatural claims, the God claims, the spirit claims, none of it that has any demonstrated reliability or truth, no tie to reality other than the humans who want it to be true.
There seem to be some papers out there that are pointing to the idea that humans are, like, some people are more hardwired to believe in or to have spiritual beliefs. So it's kind of like, I mean, if you could teach them something a little bit safer, I just feel like
maybe I could teach you. Maybe I could.
They don't have the access to atheism.
Maybe I could teach you to stop looking for a middle ground and stop saying things like, there seem to be some papers out there that suggest this, because whilst the notion that some people may or may not be hardwired, we know that people can change their mind to whatever extent they can, and that, for example, I used to believe and now I don't. Was I hardwired? Did I change my wiring? Or did I just get new information?
By the way, as a society, we are constantly teaching and making laws to oppose the ways in which we are hardwired. There's a lot, if you wanted to talk about Homo sapiens as animals and what things we would have evolved and what things were going to be maintained in our psychology, as a society, we have to have laws because people are going to do things that oppose that. So it's not that impressive. As far as when you said the middle ground thing, halfway, but the middle ground between a lie and the truth is half of a lie. The middle ground between delusion and reality is half of a delusion. That's not acceptable. That's not a line that I'm willing to cross.
Right, but the idea of a useful God isn't necessarily delusional. I mean, it's like if you can't find him, he's not there. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking.
This sounds very similar to that.
Right? I mean, you guys are asking the question every week.
Why should we be looking? What about the universe necessitates a God that we should be looking for versus anything else we can imagine up?
Well, I mean, God could take any form, but the point is that it's like a creative exercise, and it just helps.
A creative exercise.
To find
what does that? What does that mean? Because to me, it sounds like a creative exercise is a fancy way of saying lying to yourself. I don't need to create, and I don't need to create or be creative to discover truth, because I'm not creating anything. I'm discovering things. I don't need to be creative. You're like, oh, well, the fact that you can't find God doesn't mean that he's not there. Maybe you're supposed to be looking. Well, that's the same thing is true for universe creating pixies and fairies and ghosts and everything else. The fact that you don't have any evidence for them doesn't mean they're not there, but that's not the point, because we don't believe something until it's proven false. We should be reserving belief until it has been demonstrated to be worthy of belief, period. So what is this creative exercise that you think is important?
It's basically like if we're going to do something we might as well do it well. So, like, if you're going to look for God, you might not.
You don't. No. You don't get to do the, if you're going to look for God, you might as well do it well. Because I can say, if you're going to look for universe farting pixies, you might as well do it well. If you're going to go slaughter people, you might as well do it well. If you're going to have really bad ideas, you might as well make them the bestest bad ideas. What reason, this is what Jimmy was asking, what I asked as well, what reason do we have to think that it would be a worthwhile pursuit to go looking for a God? And where would we start?
I don't think there are great scientific reasons that I know of right now, but as far as just intuitive reasons, people feel like there's a God and they want to look for him, so they might as well be doing it in a way that's safe.
Kevin, I genuinely don't give a fuck about what people intuit. I don't think that people's intuition is it warrants an excursion. If people think there must be a fountain of youth, should we then go spend billions of dollars scouring the earth to try to find this mythical fountain of youth? People have told stories about it. It supposedly exists in a number of different places. Do we have any reason at all to put a single dollar towards exploring the world to find a fountain of youth?
Well, I mean, not $1 billion.
How much money do you think we should? How much money do you realistically think we should spend looking for a fountain of youth?
Well, just to give an example, if someone were like a flat earther and we could convince them to get on a plane,
I asked a specific question.
Worthwhile.
How much money should we spend, in your opinion, looking for a fountain of youth?
Well, symbolically, yeah.
I didn't ask about fucking symbolically.
Probably not
How
much,
many
no.
actual United States hard-ass fucking dollars pulled out of your bank account are you willing to put forward to look for a fountain of youth? Put your money where your mouth is. How much are you willing to pull out of your bank account to look for a fountain of youth?
I'm not willing to spend money on that.
Good. How much money are you willing to spend looking for a God?
The call broke up. I'm sorry.
How much money from your bank account are you willing to spend looking for a God?
It would depend on the study. That's the whole point.
I'm asking you the exact same question. Why is it so difficult for you to answer the fucking question? You just said you wouldn't spend any of your money looking for a fountain of youth, and now I want to know how much of your money you're willing to spend looking for a God.
I mean, my own personal God, I spend a lot of money on that,
Why can you never fucking answer the question, Kevin? How much of your personal money are you willing... Shut up and listen. How much of your personal money in real dollars are you willing to spend looking for a God?
Not more money than would take away like my safety.
Goodbye.
Wait,
I'm going to let Jimmy do it.
Yeah.
Learn what a fucking quantity is. You knew what it was when you said zero for the other one. You are not engaging honestly on this topic. Go ahead.
Kevin, I'm only going to leave you with this because you had brought up something earlier on and I wrote it down. You had basically said that the reason we need to find a middle ground is because for the people who find a God, it is useful. And I've been stuck on that for the last however long it was taking you to not answer Matt's question. I cannot give you a single example of a person who did successfully find a God. I can give you examples until I can just start listing now and we'll be here for days of people who believed they found God and hadn't found God, that they were mistaken that they had found God. So the concept of finding that middle ground, because for the people who find it, it's useful, sounds a whole lot like that very first call we had today, where somebody thought it might be good for poor people who are ignorant to have a God because they can place certain useful functions there. And I don't know why you would defend that when there is a zero. Do you have a single example of somebody successfully finding a God who can actually demonstrate that they found a God?
There's a little lag. I think I said for people that were finding or looking for God. And the example would just be, if we're going to teach people who are going to be very superstitious about a God, we should try to create one that is as safe as possible, as likely as possible, instead of allowing
so it is
people
within
to fall
your
into this
values
huge
to
tiger trap.
So it is within your values to lie to people if they, I think this is back to your hardwired shit. If they are more prone to believe anyway, which, by the way, hardwired does not mean that you're going to for sure do it. From a psychological perspective, you could say it just makes certain things extremely tempting that maybe shouldn't be tempting. But is it your suggestion that we should, knowing that we don't actually have the answer, make up a God which will make these people more polite in society and try to convince them to worship that God instead of telling them the truth?
Something along those lines. I just think that some sects of religion are safer than others, and we should encourage them more than others.
That's a totally different point. That is a totally different point, because there you're talking about presumably people with authentic beliefs. Matt and I have both said we prefer progressive Christians to non-progressive Christians. Doesn't mean we wouldn't. Were we done with all of the fundamentalist Christians, I assure you we'd argue with the progressive Christians more. And by the way, on this show, I'm happy to argue with them anyway. You said we should make up a God for those people who are superstitious and going to believe. That is an acknowledgement of lying, that we would send them to a God. You think that, I'm just going to ask, do you think that Matt and I, instead of trying to tell people why religion doesn't make any sense, why different sects of Christianity doesn't make sense, Mormonism is harmful, instead of doing that and trying to get people to wake up and live in reality with us, we should instead try and promote the universalist Unitarian idea of God, because that's an easier sell? Is that your position?
No, I think that just your nod to progressive Christians is kind of what I was looking for.
It's not at all what you said.
You know that these people have a genuine belief, right?
I don't know that any of them, anybody has a genuine belief, because I can't know that. But that's not at all what you said or suggested. And my thing is entirely out of politeness and wanting to see humans harmed the least. Progressive Christians, while doing harm to other people by spreading their religion, do less harm than fundamentalist Christians or even moderate Christians. That's the entirety that position comes from. It is not a hope that most people become progressive Christians. Truly, if I hope most people become something, it's secular humanist.
Yeah, but you would want someone like a fundamentalist to at least rule things out. And I think they're listening more from that perspective. That's what they would take from listening to your show. Is, well, at least these ideas are ridiculous, you know. But I don't know. I think that's about as far as I can take it. I'm kind of like shaking over here, man.
I get it, Kevin. I think call back. I'd like to talk to you about your religious beliefs and whether or not they're logical. We'll do that another day. Call back.
I genuinely think about it.
Yeah, think about more before you call in next time, because I don't actually think you knew what your point was when you called in today. Because it's weird how far your final point is from your original. So just do that thought, maybe write some stuff out before you call next time, and
appreciate you
let's
guys,
talk about it.
And you as well, Matt. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin.
Goodbye.
I think I would rather die than be responsible for lying to people about a God I knew didn't exist because I thought humanity was so... And that, I know that's a dramatic position. I'm not trying to Jordan Peter. I'd rather die than delete this tweet, but I would rather die than choose to lie to people about a God that doesn't exist. Genuinely.
Yeah. I mean, there was somebody who was like, hey, the guy's just trying to be honest. No, when I'm calling somebody out for not being honest, that means they're not trying to be honest. And then he took it a step further, which is to suggest that, oh, there's a circumstance we should just lie to people. We should make up a God that's less bad than the God they're going to believe in if they're the sort of people that's prone to it. Well, you begin with a flawed assumption which is that there are people who are absolutely going to believe in God no matter what, and that you can tell who they are, and that you can convince them to worship a God that is less than the God that they're absolutely convinced of. It's like every single aspect of this is broken, and to top it all off, you are advocating for lying.
Yeah.
You know, you want to know why we do this? It's because we give a shit about what's actually true.
Yeah, exactly. And I have no interest in living in half a lie either. That middle ground thing was buzzing in my head.
We're over time, but we got 3 atheist callers. You want to crank these out to finish up today?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We won't encroach on anybody who's watching now. I won't be on today, but you want to go watch a good series after this at 5 our time. Aron Ra is reading the Book of Mormon. He'll have some other ex-Mormon guests on over on Aron Ra's channel. Highly, highly recommend that. I'll be back on that series next week, but I'm going to head into Austin here shortly after the show. But yeah,
because in 2.5 hours, we're going to dinner at Star of India. If you're in the Austin area, you can come join us. And I'm sorry for the crinkling, but I have to have some licorice.
That was, wait, which kind of licorice?
There's only licorice.
I guess I've always, I assume you mean black licorice then. So the red stuff you don't call
licorice. The red stuff is not licorice. Licorice is a flavor, which is why they don't call it red licorice. Only people who don't know anything about licorice call it red licorice.
Not only do I not know anything about licorice, I'm fine admitting that, and I will put effort into making sure I never find out more. I will plug my ears if you start to tell me about it. I don't want to know more. Well, we're going to talk to, that's not the right button. Holy crap, what is happening with my system? It is not updating these the first time I put them through. Anyway, we're talking to Lucas in Switzerland. Lucas, how are you doing while I fix the system again?
Hi, I'm fine. Nice to talk to you guys.
Good to talk to you. What did you want to ask? Yeah, I sure do. What did you want to ask about?
So I was recently watching a debate that Matt had with Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, in which you made a case for the bodily autonomy argument for abortion. And I thought it was a really interesting argument, but I thought there was like one point that wasn't quite touched on as much as I would have liked it, and I wanted to clarify your position on that, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I understand, of course, that no one should have the right to another one's body. But I feel like personally, what I think is a big factor in considering this situation is that if the fetus is a person, the fact that you put it into a situation where it depends on your body, to me at least, seems kind of irrelevant. You guys talked about how you don't have the moral duty.
No. If
for example, you guys...
No, sir, it doesn't. It isn't relevant. This is easy. Let's say that, would you agree that Jimmy is a person?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm a person. Now, let's say that I injured Jimmy in such a way that he needs a blood transfusion. I've now put Jimmy in a position where he needs a blood transfusion. Could you legally, and should you legally, be able to require me to donate blood to Jimmy?
I actually do think so, yes.
Okay, well, you are wrong, and you are in violation of the law, both with regard to individuals' bodily autonomy. You cannot force someone to give blood. You cannot force someone to use their body. You started by saying you understand that no one has the right to somebody else's body without their consent. And yet you immediately went and said, but I think there's a circumstance under which you have a right to somebody else's body. That violates the principle of bodily autonomy.
Well, I mean, obviously, I would say in general, I mean, I would say you don't have the right to kill someone except for, I don't know, in case of self-defense. So I do think,
I'm sorry,
in general,
but if you're not going to argue
honestly,
honestly with respect to the point, I'm going to end this, because I didn't say anything at all about killing someone. I'm talking about bodily autonomy.
No,
and when under the law, and when under the law, do you not hear me still fucking talking? I'm talking about bodily autonomy, and at what point under the law there is a legal warrant to violate bodily autonomy. And you just said that if I do something that causes Jimmy to need a blood transfusion, you think that we should be able to legally force me to provide that blood. And that is in violation with the law and with the principle of bodily autonomy. So how are you going to work in a world where if you are culpable, you now lose your bodily autonomy?
Well, so for one, I know, of course, that is the law right now. But I mean, we are discussing in a hypothetical if the law should be changed or not. So that's that. And then for the other, yeah, that's why I said in general, I would say you have the right to abolish bodily autonomy, like a foundational.
I'm not interested
it is a
in
foundational
general
principle.
I'm talking about the law and what the law should be. What is this in general shit? Do you, under any circumstances, have a right to violate someone's bodily autonomy?
I mean, if you are the reason that they need to, I would say so, yes. But
well,
I mean,
you don't. That is not the way the law works, nor do I think it's the way the law should works. If Jimmy needs a new kidney, even if I'm the one that caused the accident that led to him needing a new kidney, he, under no circumstances does he have a legal right to my kidney, and nor should he. I don't want to live in your world.
I just wanted to clarify this. that's okay for me. I mean, I really don't mean to offend you or anything. I just like if we're talking, this is of course not the same. For the concept in general, we can say it's wrong to kill someone and it is illegal to kill someone, but we can then also say that there are certain circumstances where it's okay to kill someone. So I think in general, of course, you should have bodily autonomy, but there are certain situations where you could waive your right to bodily autonomy.
Stop talking. You don't know what abortion is. Abortion is not a right to kill. Abortion is the right to terminate a pregnancy. It is the right to stop a fetus from using your body without your consent. The fact that it dies is an unfortunate biological fact of nature, but abortion is not the right to kill. And by the way, for the doofus in chat who was suggesting that I'm wrong because you have a right to self-defense, nothing about my position and nothing about bodily autonomy in any way denies the right to self-defense. As a matter of fact, abortion is self-defense. It is defending your body from a parasitical invader, period. But
yeah, so I was not saying that abortion is akin to murder. I myself,
and yet
pro-choice.
You said it multiple times. Multiple times from the very beginning where I stopped you. You were equating it to killing a person. You even brought it up when I was talking about bodily autonomy in a way where it was irrelevant. You went right back to killing a person. And then when I was done talking about it, you went right back to killing a person again, which is not what abortion is. So are you going to talk about bodily autonomy or not?
I just want to clarify what I'm saying. I say that we can have in general a right to do something or let's say the right to not do something or to not have something done to us. And then there may be exceptions to that case. I did not want to say that abortion is murder. I just said, like in the case where you do not have the right to kill someone, in certain situations, that might be the case that you do have the right to do so. I did not say that abortion is murder, and I didn't want to compare the two in that way. I just wanted to say in general, you may have the right to do something.
Do you think that you have a legal right to kill someone in self-defense?
Yes, obviously.
Cool. Case closed. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you for your time. Have a nice day.
All right, we got two more. You want to pick?
Yes. Sorry, I was calling out someone in chat.
I was giving you space because I know you've got like end of show stuff to do, and that guy specifically wanted to take my thing. So you steer the next one.
Let's take. I'm interested. I have a feeling this is one of those funny ones We're going to talk to Antoine in California, and Antoine believes he can demonstrate that Jesus is not real. And I have to warn you,
Really?
I don't think Matt or I are going to agree with you, but go for it.
Yes. How do you falsify Jesus?
Yes, I believe that. Okay, but look. First of all, I know he's a double personality person, and I think his horoscope is a Gemini, and that's why.
Hey, Antoine, real quick. The audio is whack. First of all, I can hear something in the background that might be us. If we're on speakerphone, please take us off. But the call can't go on if this is going to be. And then as far as your thing, I don't know if it's speaker or what. You're just very, very muffled. I heard the word Gemini in there somewhere. And if this is astrology suddenly, I'm not interested.
Jesus?
But you also said something. Did you say double? Hang on. I'm asking a question, Antoine. Did you say double personality or devil personality or what?
Yeah, double personality. When he prayed, because I read the book.
What's a double personality?
He believed. He has two personalities. One of them, he prays, and the other person lies to him, believing he's God. He talks to him. It's the same person. I mean, two persons. These two persons.
Okay. Antoine, it sounds as if you're trying to claim that Jesus was had multiple personality disorder, which if he did have multiple personality disorder, that would mean he was real. So you can't prove that he's not real. But Antoine gave up because
he hung up immediately.
Antoine gave up and hung up because we wouldn't let him finish his absolutely ridiculous statement about Jesus being a double personality with one that was lying to him, and he was a Gemini, and I can start there and prove that he wasn't real. No, you can't. You've assumed he's real the minute you say he's a Gemini. You've assumed he's real the minute you say he had a double personality. So yeah, I don't know what you were trying to do, but you weren't getting there. There's no path to there from here. So last call.
In general, it's good for people to know. Matt and I are going to agree the stories don't add up. But we've actually had these calls a couple of times before where people have said, hey, I think I have the argument, and it ends theism. And we end up breaking their little hearts because yet have we heard that argument either. And it's a weird thing to do.
I have a number of friends who are mythicists, and I've had them on my shows. I've had discussions with them. I'm still good friends with many of them. And hi, David, come back on sometime. But I do not think that anyone has in fact falsified Jesus from the Bible. I think there are really good cases to be made that you cannot demonstrate that he actually was real or that he existed, etc. And so I guess if we were to describe soft mythicism versus weak mythicism, I could probably get on board with kind of a soft mythicism of saying, we have not demonstrated any aspect of Jesus's life sufficient for anyone to believe anything, including that he existed. Where I draw the line is when they go a step further to suggest that they can demonstrate or prove that Jesus did not exist and that Jesus was an invented fiction. And I think in that case, they've adopted a burden of proof that they cannot meet. And you can't meet it any more strongly than I think Christians can. I'm fine with having that discussion over and over and over again for the next 50 years with all of my mythicist friends. But anything beyond soft mythicism, and you've lost me because you're claiming to falsify that which can't be falsified. Yeah.
I'm very similar. I think I'm glad the mythicist stuff has come up because it's brought a lot of very interesting late night readings and thinkings about things. But I'm that same position of, a lot of it is awfully conspicuous for sure. I don't feel I need to take a hard position.
Yeah, some of my favorite arguments ever have been with like Carrier and Fitz and my other mythicist friends. And then there's also some, I don't know how else to phrase it, batshit crazy conspiracy theorist mythicists who think that Jesus was invented in the 4th century by the Pope and some Masons. And then they have conventions where they just, ego stroke each other for that over and over again.
That would be an interesting conspiracy that you would have a Pope before the myth of Jesus. That's wild.
That's what you get when in some of the mythicist circles, though, but not all of them.
We've got, as our last call of the day, Alex in Maryland. Alex, go on ahead.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
I hear you great. Fine. This is fantastic.
All right, awesome. I just wanted to ask you guys about how an atheist can really deal with the concept of death. I've been an atheist for as long as I can really remember, but I have never really come to terms with the idea of death and nothing after that. So I was wondering if you guys had any opinions on the topic.
Sure. I don't know, Jimmy, you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll go first. I don't know that we have to, and that sort of sucks. But as far as like, look at every creature that exists, they're all pretty universally trying not to die. So it makes sense to me that we have developed a serious, sorry for how condescending this word might sound, but a very serious angst surrounding death. I'm not stoked about it. I'm not stoked about non-existence. If you count on 80 to 90 years, hopefully alive, the way I eat, 40 to 50, I don't know, but it's that's not enough time. I don't want to live forever. That sounds terrible also, but I think I could do a few centuries if I had a healthy body that would support it. And I think I'd even enjoy more, like, say you do 10 years and then they put you in a pod and then you wake up another 1,000 years later and you see what's changed. I think that would be amazing to just pop in for 10 years every 1,000 years or so. That sounds the perfect life for me. I don't know that we are in any way meant to just accept as a fact of reality that we are going to die, or at least that's extremely likely. Of course, there are now people who believe that's not necessarily the case, with consciousness maybe being transferred or whatever. I don't think you have to do anything necessarily besides I accept that that's going to happen. And the funny thing is like, as far as how do you then go on accepting that you're going to one day not exist? Well, the alternative is not going on. Are you going to make yourself not exist sooner because you so badly don't want to not exist? I've thought about this.
Hello?
And yeah, sorry. Did we cut out for you?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit for a second. Yeah,
right.
but I can hear you now.
Let me jump in for a second. I think that what I suspect a lot of people are afraid of is this concept of I will experience non-existence, which just isn't true.
Yeah.
If I stop existing, I'm not going to experience it. Basically, I'm going to be experiencing things, and then all of a sudden, as far as I can tell, experiencing just stops, and I cease to experience anything. And in all intents and purposes, I cease to be. And so the only time that sadness can happen is while I'm alive, and if I'm thinking about someday I'm not going to experience things. And so for me, as a pragmatist, I spend no time at all worrying about things that I cannot fix and cannot experience. And there's a great quote attributed to Mark Twain, may not be from him, that goes something like, I was dead for 1 billion years before I was born, and it never troubled me one bit. To me, if I try to think back, hey, what was life like for me before I existed? Well, that's a non sequitur. It does not follow. Before I existed, there was no life for me. And after I stop existing, there will be no life for me. So there's nothing there for me to worry about or fear or be bothered by. The only thing that can really impact me is right here and right now, where I have a fear of missing out. It's like, oh, Christopher Hitchens famously said, it's not like somebody tells you that the party's over. It's like they came up and said, the party's going to keep going, but you have to leave. And so you're no longer experiencing the party. But the thing that troubles you is that you will continue to, once you've left the party, sit there and go, oh, I wish I was there. I wish I was there. I wish I was there. When you've died, there's no you left to go, gosh, I wish I was still alive. Gosh, I wish I was still alive. That happens right now, where you imagine yourself in that position going, oh man, but I wanted to stay alive. I wanted to be alive for that.
Yeah.
And my take on it is, why on earth would I ruin a precious, I'm only going to get one life as far as I know. Every single minute I spend here is valuable and precious. Why would I spend any of it lamenting the fact that someday I'm not going to be experiencing it? Because that means if I had, let's say you only existed for 100 seconds. If you spent 10 of those seconds upset that you weren't going to experience 110 seconds, then you've wasted it, and now you only get to live for 90.
Yeah, I think I just find it a hard concept to. I don't want to say ignore, because it's not ignoring. Obviously, you've thought about this quite extensively, but I just find it hard to not think about it going through life, knowing that I'm apparently going to stop existing.
Matt may have a superpower here, because that logic that he just said was entirely sound, doesn't do shit for me either. So I understand, Alex, where it's like, well, why waste what little life I have worrying about dying if it's going to happen either way? That doesn't stop a thing for me. And I know I've actually had this conversation with lots of other atheist creators. In fact, I think Aron and I took it on either last week or the week before, whenever Aron was on with me. And Aron's much closer to my end than Matt's end on this. Aron very much laments and has more angst about it. And so it is one of those things of, on my end, I don't feel convinced we shouldn't have angst about it. I just try not to waste too much time on it, as much as I can. But I'm sure I do waste more than I should. And clearly I waste more time on it than Matt does.
Yeah, I definitely fall closer on your side, Jimmy. I understand Matt's logic, but I don't know if I can ever really make that. I'm not that strong mentally.
I think a cognitive behavioral therapist would tell you, when you find yourself being hit by that thought, you should go find something that makes your life having been more worth telling about, worth living. When you're running into that, like, oh man, it's going to suck to not exist because all I'm going to miss out on, go do something that you would have been sad to miss out on. But now you get to, because you're alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I wouldn't feel this way if not for the concept of an afterlife in the first place sometimes, though.
Oh, that's, yeah. You've got afterlife envy. Yeah. The way that people get that comfort. Fuck yeah. I totally get that. And we don't.
I understand that. And I don't think I have maybe I have a superpower. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Who knows? It's just, I have enough things in my life that are real to worry about. I've had a triple bypass operation on my heart. I have health issues. I have money issues. I have relationship issues. Every time somebody comes up and they're like, aren't you worried about climate change? Yes, I am. I wasn't until you said it, because I managed to, block it out of my head as one of the 500 other things that I'm worried of, that I need to worry about, that I can't really do anything directly about right now. If we went through and listed all those things, if we got to, aren't you worried about death? No, I am never, ever, ever worried about death. Only to the extent that I can do something about it. So when the doctor said, hey, your heart's fucked, we need to go in and operate on it, I was like, okay, cool. And you can talk to my brother. Happy birthday. I love you. And Arden, not happy birthday, but I love you too. And they'll both tell you that I don't think there was any obvious concern. Maybe even a freakish lack of concern, because I was like, okay, I'm in the hospital. I'm around experts. They know what they're going to do. They know what the odds are. There's nothing I can do about this. So let me lay down here on the bed. I'll let them put me out. And if I wake up, I wake up. And if I don't, you know what? I'm kind of happy with a lot of things. Maybe I'm really weird. I probably am. But I genuinely don't spend any time worrying about death.
It is about to be 5 o'clock, Alex, so we do have to go. If you want, you can call back if you want to explore this concept more with us, but we don't want to encroach on Aron's show and everything else going on. Thank you to the people. I put in the live chat a poll where people can answer whether or not they dread dying. I'm very interested. I mean, so far, 67% of people are lying. And just kidding. I don't know. You could all be telling the truth. I have my doubts. Don't forget, you can come hang out with us tonight at Star of India. That's at 7 o'clock. There is a link to the meetup group down below. And you can RSVP if you like, so we can give them a better count on how many people are showing up. And tomorrow, Forrest and Gutsick Gibbon, Erica, will be on Skeptalk. And then Tuesday, it'll be myself and Dominic Syracuse, the director of Cognitive Behavioral Theater. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'll let Matt say whatever he wants as a goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Come have dinner with us if you're in town.
Do it.